Hey, welcome back, everybody. This is Matt and Cheryl's Gen Excellent Playlist. I'm Matt.
I'm Cheryl.
And we continue to build our Gen X playlist as we tour through the year 1982. I've been listening to a ton of 1982 music lately, but it's slowed down the last couple of days because the Olympics has begun. And of course, that's all I'm doing now
Me
in my spare
too.
time.
I love watching the Olympics. I never watch sports at all. Like, I really don't care about watching sports, but I always watch the Olympics. I always have ever since I was a kid. And
Yeah, me
there's
too.
just something about it that's just really interesting. And I mean, I actually find it inspiring. I don't know. I think it's really cool. I love
Absolutely.
it.
Yeah. You
Yeah.
have a favorite event?
I like swimming. I like watching gymnastics. I like watching the skateboarding. That's really fun. I like watching the weird events too, like table tennis and badminton and handball. That one is really interesting.
I love handball. Did you play handball in PE growing up?
No, I don't remember playing handball.
We must have been really lucky in Chehalis growing up. We played that in PE in junior high, and I think in high school too, and I loved it. It's a great sport.
I
It's
wish
really
we
fun.
would have, because I would have been really good at it, because I'm
I
really
was
good at
good at
volleyball
it,
and
yeah.
softball. So I would have been really good at handball and soccer, because I was a goalkeeper in soccer too. Yeah, and now there's so many different interesting events. And I like watching it during the day because they show the unusual stuff. You know, it's not just like the
Right.
more popular sports.
I like to watch it live. I like to see it
Mhm.
live rather than the rehashed, NBC primetime presentation.
Yeah.
People are saying, come on, let's talk about music. It's music, but you know what? There's a music angle here. Clearly, if you watch the opening ceremonies, toward the end, just a show-stopping performance by Celine Dion.
I didn't see that. I saw that she did perform, but I didn't see the opening ceremonies.
Celine Dion is not going to make our playlist. I think we can safely say that. I don't think either of us are fans of her music at all.
No.
Which is not to say that she's not brilliant and incredibly talented, because she is certainly in the discussion as the preeminent vocal talent of, I don't know, you would call her our generation. I mean, she's a little older.
She was popular in our generation.
Yeah, she emerged when we were late teens, college age, I guess. It's just, the style of music she records just isn't our thing. But what an incredible talent. And if you don't know, she's been dealing with these medical issues in recent years, debilitating nervous system disorder, and hasn't been recording or performing. And she goes out there, not only in front of this huge audience in the pouring rain in Paris, it's kind of the culmination of this incredible event, which is the Olympic Games opening ceremonies. It's always an incredible production, and absolutely tore it up. I mean, incredible. It was, I don't know what the song was. I should probably look it up. It's a beautiful song. Sung in French, of course. She's not from France. She's French-Canadian, right?
Yeah, from Quebec.
But wow. I mean, for somebody who has not been performing recently at all.
And who has medical issues that are, debilitating to her for performance.
Wow. I mean, it brought tears to my eyes.
Wow.
Which is saying something, because, again, she's not my thing,
Yeah.
But if you are a fan of music and you don't appreciate how talented she is, you're just not paying attention. But that was beautiful.
There's another music connection too. Snoop Dogg. Snoop Dogg is one of the commentators on NBC.
And he's great.
He's great. I love it. Yeah. And he goes out and he sits with the families and really gets to know them. And it's really cool. And that's one of the things I love about the Olympics too, is the human element. They always bring in the stories about the athletes and their families. But Snoop Dogg, I mean, he's just hilarious for one thing, but also he's really genuinely involved in getting to know the families and the stories. And I just think it's really cool. I find it very entertaining and interesting.
Well, he's a huge sports fan, very knowledgeable sports fan. Was an athlete himself. I mean, you look at him, he's about 6'5", 6'6", towers over Mike Tirico. It's just cracked me up when he's on screen with Mike Tirico, who's just a dwarf.
Yes.
And then, anybody who underrates the intelligence of hip hop guys does so at their own peril. You have to have quite a mind to do that well. Now, there's a lot of garbage hip hop out there. There's tons of garbage. But the guys who are really good at it, you have to have an incredibly quick, agile mind.
Mm-hmm.
And Snoop is a legend for a reason. I mean, I remember when he first came on the scene. I was down in Phoenix working at a ghetto record store in Central Phoenix called Circles. And it was a soundtrack that came out, and the movie was called Deep Cover.
With Lawrence
Lawrence
Fishburne.
Fishburne. Right. And I think this was his recorded debut. He was a Dr. Dre discovery and did the title track on this. He was such an original sounding rapper when nobody sounded like that. He just had such an original style. And shortly after that, he had his own record and on Dr. Dre's The Chronic, and boom, superstar. But his story's pretty incredible. I mean, I kind of lump him in with guys like Charles Barkley or George Foreman. You know, Snoop Dogg's, he's got a checkered past. I mean, he rolled with gangs. He was implicated in a murder. You know, I mean, he was the real deal. He wasn't just pretending. All these guys, at least when they first emerged in culture, they had these really tough, angry persona.
Yeah.
And now they've evolved into these beloved characters. You know, who doesn't like Charles Barkley? Who doesn't like George Foreman? Snoop's the same way. He's just lovable.
Mean, George Foreman has his grill. Charles Barkley has a talk show. Snoop did a show with Martha, although they both did time. But he's really inserted himself into our culture. I think it's really cool when these guys can kind of cross over into that space and still be themselves. You know, like he's still Snoop Dogg. He's still being himself, but it's just in a mainstream setting.
Kudos to NBC for bringing him on board. That was a really wise choice, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I'm watching the Olympics 24/7 this time of year. But prior to the Olympic Games starting, listening to a lot of nights, I've plowed through quite a few albums already.
Yeah, me too.
And just to rehash our exercise here, Cheryl and I are Gen Xers. We're kind of in the heart of that generation. We're both about the same age. And our exercise here is putting together a playlist that could be used at a general group gathering that somewhat represents the soundtrack of our lives, starting from our earliest music memories. And for us, at least on my part, it started in 1972. Yes, right, for me, 1972. So we started in 1972, and we're building up as we go along. So just one song from 72, then two from 73, add two each year, 4 from 74, 6, 75, 8, 10, so on. It'll peak in our high school years, so the most number of songs will come from those years, and then we'll taper down into young adulthood, and we'll end in 99 when we are hitting our 30s.
I like that you explain this because every time I'm always like, how are we doing this again? How many songs are we choosing again?
We do this because we enjoy it immensely, and whoever else wants to get on board and enjoy it too, that's wonderful, but it won't change our enjoyment of the process.
Oh, well, I didn't say why are we doing it. I said, how are we doing it? Like, how is this working? Like, how many songs do we choose?
I'm just saying I have done a terrible job of promoting, B, explaining.
Oh, me too. Me too. We do this because we love this.
Yeah. Basically, when you tune into our podcast, you're just tuning into a conversation Cheryl and I are having about music, and we're doing the research so we can appreciate the songs a little more, and hopefully you can too. So the two songs that we've chosen this week, and I give Cheryl a hard time because she waffles all that. She's constantly changing her mind. But I'm the waffler this week.
I know. You've been driving me nuts this week. I'm like, just pick a freaking song.
Well, there are several aspects that just excite me about this exercise that we're doing. And one of them is rediscovering music that we loved as kids and maybe haven't listened to a lot lately or followed up on as teenagers or college kids or 20s or whatever. And just kind of getting back to appreciating the music that first turned us on as youngsters. There's been a lot of those cases.
Yeah.
The other is discovering new things from that era that either we heard at the time or didn't really get, didn't understand, didn't like, or maybe just flew right over our heads. I think we talked about in the last episode that Donna Summer album, the two singles from her 1982 album, which were just fantastic that I have zero memory of hearing at the time. And how is that possible? Because Love Is in Control made the top 10.
Yeah.
How did I not notice it or not hear it at the time? And we've set some parameters. The main reason being we don't want this to just be the Matt and Cheryl show, just our personal favorites. This is supposed to appeal to a group. So we have forced ourselves to pick at least 4 big hit songs from each year. 2 that were global hits throughout the world, and 2 more that were big hits in the United States, 2 of the biggest hits from that year in the United States. our last episode, we focused on Toto's work in 1982, which was pretty incredible. Not only their own smash album 4, but the work they did for other artists. We didn't even get to the biggest one, which is Michael Jackson's Thriller, which comes out at the end of the year. We'll talk about that later. But one of the songs that Toto guys played on that year that I hadn't heard or didn't remember from that year was a minor hit, just cracked the top 40. You were more aware of than I. So part of my weekend routine, our station here in Portland, Cheryl's in the Seattle area, I'm in the Portland area. Down here in Portland, iHeartMedia station, the Eagle 106.7. Part of my weekend routine is listening to the old Casey Kasem American Top 40 reruns, which iHeartMedia runs on their Eagle FM affiliate down here. Saturday mornings, it's the 70s. Sunday mornings, it's the 80s. So it'll be this week in some year from the decade of the 70s on a Saturday, some year from the, and this week it happened to be 1982. And I'm like, sweet. It's always nice when it's the year we're working on. And I heard this song. It's really cool. It's by a band called Eye to Eye. And you were already aware of this song.
Yes, because it has Jeff Porcaro. Nice Girls is the name of the hit. It was a top 40 hit in 82.
It's a really interesting song to me because we're kind of at the tail end of the yacht rock era in 1982 that kind of dominated the sounds of the turn of the 80s. So it's got elements of that. It's kind of got that jazzy, slick studio session guy feel to it, but it also has that mechanized drum beat that's starting to take over a lot of popular music. Just that straight 4 on the floor. Disco never died. It just kind of morphed into something else.
Yes.
And weaved its way into the new wave. And you got a lot of synth pop dance type music that's that same rhythmic feel.
And it did feel like disco turned more into like the synth pop. This is kind of that really pretty, slick, perfect vocal sound. It kind of reminds me a little bit of Mecca for Moderns, the Manhattan Transfer album, which also has the Toto guys playing on. But similar because it has the vocals, you know, like just a very pretty sounding vocal. But it's produced by Gary Katz, who produced Steely Dan. Mm-hmm. And if you look at the artists on this album, Jim Keltner plays on it too, Dean Parks, Timothy B. Schmidt, Rick Derringer, and Jeff Porcaro. I mean, these guys are all session musicians.
Yeah, all of them played on Steely Dan records, I believe. I know Rick Derringer did. Parks did. Porcaro did, of course.
Yeah, I know they did. And Abe Laboriel, yeah. The song, I think, is a good song. I could see how it was a top 40 hit, but I think the whole album has some really cool stuff on it. Definitely if you like that slick LA sound, like the Manhattan Transfer, Mecca for Moderns, which people know the song Tell Us About the Boy from New York City from that album. That's not really what I'm talking about. I'm talking about more like the first song on that album. It sounds very much like that. It's a very slick sound, but it's very pleasing because it just sounds so good.
That's the first time I've heard it or remember hearing it. And yeah, it's a good one. It's a good one.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the struggle with 1982. So we make these lists ahead of time before we start doing the episodes. And then we kind of started doing this in the 80s where we'll make our lists ahead of time and then see what matches and then focus on those songs. There's a lot of good songs, but 1981's revelation for me was Split Enz. Mm-hmm. Certainly awareness of the group, heard some of their songs, liked them, never really listened to them deeply. And then all of a sudden my eyes got wide open hearing their 81 album, Wayata Corroboree, whatever you want to call it. And then in particular, History Never Repeats. Just brilliant, brilliant song. And one of several brilliant songs of that album. This year's revelation for me, another band I was certainly aware of. I've got a CD in my collection I've had for 25 years. Bow Wow Wow. And Wow Wow, I never really listened to that closely. And it's a lot bigger wow than I realized. I thought I Want Candy would be a potential song for the playlist, and it still might make it on here. So they put out an album in 82. It was tailored for the United States. And they got Kenny Laguna to produce. First of all, they came out with an EP called Last of the Mohicans, and they recycled the controversial album cover, the takeoff on the Monet painting that had Annabella, the lead singer. I guess we should get a little background on the group if I'm going to talk about it.
Yeah.
Bow Wow Wow, and part of the reason I think that it didn't resonate with me, and I think it's been overlooked by a lot of critics too. I know Robert Christgau was an exception. He was a big fan. He's kind of like the dean of rock critics, East Coast rock critics, you know, for the Village Voice. They were a Malcolm McLaren creation.
Yes.
So Malcolm McLaren, of course, was the manager behind the Sex Pistols, kind of a notorious figure.
Who also had a solo album out in 1982.
Yep. Yep. So Adam and the Ants, before they had their big rise to popularity in Britain, if you're an Adam and the Ants fan in the United States, you may not realize how popular they were in UK. They were huge there.
Yeah.
They were more of a underground thing in the United States, even at their peak. But before their big popularity, which was their second record, their first album was kind of a more dark, gothy affair called Dirk Wears White Socks.
And an angular kind of Gang of Four sound to it also. And
it's a cool record.
Really cool album. Yeah.
So the band on that record, Malcolm McLaren, basically poached the whole band away from Adam Ant, Simon Goddard's his real name, and formed this new group. So he took the instrumentalists from that first Adam and the Ants album, and they found this new vocalist, just found her. I mean, it wasn't Malcolm that found her, it was an associate of his. I saw this chick in a laundry singing away to the radio, and I think you need to give her an audition. She's got something. And boy, does she. And she was super young.
She was 13 when they first discovered her.
13 years old, half Burmese. Her stage name is Annabella Lewin. Striking looking young lady and striking voice too. I mean, really cool vocal sound and approach. And their whole sound was, I don't want to say it's unique. So you've already got world music kind of filtering in here. Peter Gabriel obviously is tapping in the Talking Heads album, so influential, Remain in Light, with the African sounds on that record.
And the drums of Burundi and WOMAD, was starting at this time, that Peter Gabriel.
So Malcolm was kind of on the cutting edge of bringing world music and combining it with punk and new wave sounds.
Yeah. And that's basically what his solo album is too.
So yeah, he's enamored with this African drum sound that comes out of Burundi, this tribal beat. And the drummer on that first Adam Ant album and in Bow Wow Wow, his name's Dave Barbarossa. Powerhouse. This guy's...
Yeah.
So you listen to these albums and you're like, the rhythms are just incredibly powerful. And I'm thinking, well, they had to have overdubbed different percussion. Then you look at live clips. He's just doing this on his drum kit. It's really something to see.
Yeah.
They were a hell of a live band. You've got this tribal drum. I mean, this guy's like an octopus. You can't believe it's one guy doing these drums. And then you've got Matthew Ashman, the guitarist, who's kind of got this surf guitar sound, spaghetti western sound. And he's playing this super cool Gresh White Falcon. And Ashman's a striking looking guy. If you hear interviews with him, he's very cockney, very punk. He's got a
mohawk.
It's not really a mohawk. It's not spiked up like a mohawk.
Oh, yeah.
And Alabella, too, has a similar do, where the sides are totally shaved, long hair on top coming down. And then on top of that, I mean, they're both great players, Ashman and Barbarossa. The bassist is a beast. Lee Gorman is his name. Hell of a bass player. And when he's not busily doing runs on the bass, he's adding to the percussion with the bass. Really cool sound. And then you add the striking vocals of Annabella on top. They were pretty unique, but they got written off because Malcolm McLaren had this reputation and there were all these gimmicks involved. First of all, you got this very young girl leading the group, 13, 14 years old, and the lyrical content was racy. It was sexualized and meant to titillate.
And then you have her posing nude on the cover.
Right, posing nude, and then that became a big controversy. Her mother tried to bring people up on charges for indecency. So you got all this other stuff around it, all these gimmicks and things that just, I think, turned off a lot of critics. They just kind of wrote them off as this gimmicky pop band. But they are anything but. I mean, they were a powerhouse group. And this music is just intoxicating.
I Want Candy, that's a cover song. The Strangeloves did the original version in the mid-'60s. But that was a perfect song for them because it has that tribal beat. It's got the cool guitar riff, that sounds great on that Gretsch guitar. Basically, they're seen as a one-hit wonder with that song.
In the United States, they are, yeah.
In the U.S.
Yeah.
But that song still endures.
And that wasn't their biggest hit at the time. Their second record, which got, a lot of critical pans, but what is it called?
Do You Want to Hold Me?
Do You Want to Hold Me? That actually charted a little higher. I mean, I Want Candy has been the more enduring song for them. That's the one you're more likely to hear if you hear a Bow Wow Wow song.
Oh, yeah. The video was played on MTV a lot, too. I mean, that had heavy rotation on MTV.
And they were visually striking, so they fit MTV perfectly. They put out a record in the UK. It's just imports here in the United States. but RCA, their record company, wanted to get them on American radio. So they get Kenny Laguna in to produce. He produced Joan Jett, the album that had I Love Rock and Roll, massive hit in the United States. Probably should have been on our playlist. Didn't quite make it for 81. So I Want Candy is on this album of the same title that comes out of the United States. There's remixed, re-recorded versions of some older songs on there, and the entirety of the Last of the Mohicans EP, which has a song called Go Wild in the Country, which is just a wild song. I mean, it's all about rhythm with these guys, and it's somewhat atonal. They're definitely drawing on post-punk sounds like Gang of Four, you already mentioned. But it's just this ecstatic chorus, and when they do it live, you cannot stand still to this music. It just demands ecstatic dancing.
Well, and that combined with Annabelle's vocals, that brings more of a pop element into it, her vocals do.
Yeah.
So, Adam and the Ants' first album, there wasn't that catchiness to it. There wasn't something to draw people in that pop vein, where Bow Wow Wow did have that.
So I'm waffling here on them. I'm not picking a Bow Wow song this week. I'm leaving it open to maybe going back and adding it later. Originally, I was going to go with Go Wild in the Country. I was like, I Want Candy is the one most people know. That'd probably be the one you should pick. But then I slotted Go Wild in the Country onto the playlist with songs that we've already picked and songs that we're likely going to pick later. And it just didn't have the same impact for me when I listened to it in that setting. So there was another song I was going to choose before, and I'm going back to it. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So this long diversion of Bow Wow Wow, we may get back to them later on.
And this was about how long the conversation went back and forth between whether or not you were going to pick Bow Wow Wow or Van Halen.
So I'm going with Van Halen, but I'm picking a Van Halen track that's somewhat divisive, not only in the Van Halen camp, but among Van Halen fans. Van Halen's cover of the Martha and the Vandellas Motown hit, Dancing in the Street, and by the English Beat from their third record, Special Beat Service, their third and final studio album, Save It for Later. So on the surface, you wouldn't think these songs had anything in common at all, but it turns out they do. Did you know, Cheryl, before you started researching to talk about Save It for Later, did you know about the Pete Townsend connection with this song?
Of course I
did.
You
must have. Yes.
That's actually how I originally knew this song. I heard the Pete Townsend version before I ever heard the English Beat version. Pete Townsend covered the song. Well, he's covered it many times, actually, but originally it was on the 1985 concert for Brixton. This came out around the time of the White City album in 1985. He had David Gilmour in his band. So Pete and Dave were trying to figure out this song, Save It for Later, which was one of Pete's favorite songs. And he wanted to play it live on that tour. And so they're sitting there trying to figure out the tuning because they think that the tuning is Dadgad, which is a very famous old tuning, D-A-D-G-A-D.
The 6 strings of the guitar. And David Gilmour, of course, the guitarist from Pink Floyd.
Two of the greatest guitarists in the world here trying to figure out this tuning, and they just can't quite get it right. Of course, too, this is back in the day where there's no YouTube, there's no internet, you can't just Google it. So Pete calls up Dave Wakeling, who is the lead singer of the English Beat and wrote Save It for Later, on a Saturday morning, and it's like, hey, Dave, this is Pete Townsend. Or first, whoever answered the phone is like, oh, Pete Townsend's on the phone for you. And he's like, oh, yeah, right, sure, okay. Whatever, it's probably just one of my friends.
You got to get his response right because it's priceless. First of all, Dave Wakeling seems like just a delightful gentleman. I mean, I've read a couple.
Delightful. I've had conversations with him.
I've read a couple of interviews. He is so open, so charming, and so witty.
Yes.
But his response when somebody told him, Pete Townsend's on the phone for you, I think his response was, oh, yeah, well, of course he is. He calls about this time on Saturday.
Yeah, this is about the time he calls every Saturday. Yeah, sure. Sure it's him. So he answers the phone with that attitude. Oh, hey, Pete, what's up? And Pete's like, hey, this is Pete Townsend. I'm sitting here with Dave Gilmour. And of course, Dave Wakeling's jaw drops and he's like, oh my God.
He feels like somebody's having him on. He doesn't believe this is truly.
He doesn't believe it's true. So he explains to Dave that he's wanting to cover the song and they are trying to figure it out and they can't. Well, okay, when you hear Dave Wakeling tell this story in the last 20 years, he'll say that when he actually came up with the tuning, it was not intentional. So it's actually tuned D-A-D-G-A-D. A-A-D instead of G-A-D. So he actually tuned the fourth string wrong. He tuned it to an A instead of a G, which is why Pete and Dave Gilmour could not figure this out because it didn't make any sense. It was tuned incorrectly. They thought it was Dadgad, but it wasn't. So, when you hear Dave Wakeling tell the story in more current years, he'll say that it was a mistake. Well, when you watch the video of the Live at Brixton concert where Pete introduces the song, he tells the story about how he had to call Dave Wakeling to get the right tuning for this. And Dave Wakeling tells him that the Velvet Underground used this tuning. And I don't think that's true, but that's apparently what he told Pete back then in 85 when Pete asked about it.
You didn't want to sound like a dummy. It's like, oh, I just didn't know what the hell I was doing.
Exactly. Now, in more current days, he will admit, I didn't know what I was doing. And so, they go on to figure out, okay, that's why we couldn't get we were trying to figure we couldn't get it right. Now we understand why. And, it's no surprise that he did tune this incorrectly because Dave Wakeling actually wrote this song when he was quite young, before the Beat got together as a band. He had a steel guitar that he had tuned in this manner incorrectly, but it turned out to sound pretty cool. And he would just be strumming this riff, just kind of kept going back to it. He had the song from way back and he did bring it to the band. Now, we've already talked about the English Beat because I chose Mirror in the Bathroom from their first album, I Just Can't Stop in 1980 for the playlist. Save It for Later comes out on their third album called Special Beat Service.
Talk a little bit about their second record because this one doesn't really get a lot of traction for whatever reason.
It's really weird. I've never really listened to their second record that much either. I was listening to it when we were on 81. There's no singles from it that I recognize. And for some reason, it just kind of falls between the cracks.
Yeah.
The English Beat started out as a ska band, but they always had pop leanings to them too. Like even on their first album, songs like Best Friend, I mean, they would fall under more of a pop category.
I haven't ruled out going back and plugging Best Friend in for something else in 1980. I love it that much.
Great song. So I think of the two-tone ska bands, they had more pop leanings to them from the beginning. The second album, I think, is kind of still sort of rides that line, but is more on the ska side than the pop side. And there's just nothing that really stands out on it.
And they were kind of bringing in more world music influences on that album, too, I've read. They were listening to a lot of West African music. Didn't quite have the punk edge of their first record. Their first record is brilliant.
So good.
It's that up-tempo and that edge that it has that I love.
Yeah.
The third album I've had in my life for a long time. And there's a couple of songs in there that I like a lot, including Save It for Later. Sugar and Stress, later on in the record, is one of my favorite tracks. But that's more reminiscent of the sound of their first album, which I think is why I like it.
This album actually is in contention for me for my album of the year. I love this album. I don't think it's as impactful as their first album, but I think it's a great album. Every song on it is good.
Great recording, too. All their albums sound
It sounds
really good.
Really good. Yeah. The second album is called What Happened? So maybe that just tells you right there. What happened? You almost have this sort of feeling like, I don't know, what did happen,
Yeah, it just falls in the cracks. I mean, you never hear those songs.
No, and like I said, I went back and tried to understand, what is this album about? And I still have it never caught my attention. So I don't know. But Special Beat Service, aside from Save It for Later, which Save It for Later actually ended up being their most well-known hit in the United States. And part of that, too, was that it came out right when MTV was amping up, and that video was played pretty regularly on MTV.
And it still wasn't a hit per se.
No.
It was just the most familiar song, and it's grown in stature over the years. They never had any hits on radio in the United States.
I only knew it really from MTV. That's where I knew it mostly, was seeing the video on MTV. And I think a lot of people are familiar with it because of that. Yeah. And like you said, it did grow in stature over the years because it's been used in a lot of movies and it had a lot more exposure in that sense. But going back to the initial Dave Wakeling bringing this to the band, and that push and pull between the ska punky sound versus the more pop sound was an issue with this song. And the reason why it really didn't get recorded before their third album, particularly because the bass player, David Steele, who really pushed against it. He thought it was too rock or old wave and just didn't really represent what he thought the band was going forward. And so he just kept blocking this song. And finally, the record label and Dave Wakeling were like, we've got to put this song out. We don't have anything else that is that compelling. And Dave Wakeling actually said, if we don't record this song, I'm going to go ahead and just record it solo. It's understandable because a lot of this album really does stray away from what this band was initially about.
Yeah.
But it was also moving forward with the times. I mean, really, ska was, like the Specials now became Fun Boy 3, and they're nothing like ska. That ska revival was so short-lived that it makes sense that they would be moving more toward a pop arena. Now, they weren't really writing the whole new romantic movement that was happening around them. And in fact, another great song on this album, I Confess, they made a video for that song. And it was totally like making fun of the new romantics. Like they're wearing makeup, he's got earrings on and stuff. And they were basically trying to make a comment like, this isn't us. Although the video ended up being like, people were like, oh, you look so gorgeous. You guys look great. And they were like, no, that's not what we were going for. We were actually making fun of this.
And they're from the same town as Duran Duran. They're both from Birmingham.
They are.
Yeah.
Which, at this point, Duran Duran is really bubbling up and starting to take over the world. And they're just not part of that. But going back to Dave Wakeling writing this song, he was really into John Martin, Van Morrison, Tim Buckley, these kind of more folky, heavy acoustic sound, which is where the roots of this song are. When the English Beat perform it, it is played on an electric guitar and it has a lot of instrumentation behind it. When you hear like Pete Townshend's version, and actually a very current version of the song is Eddie Vedder.
I think Eddie Vedder might enjoy our podcast if he ever discovers it. He's a big fan of that. He's a huge Split Enz fan. Pearl Jam's done Split Enz songs before.
Well, he's also a huge Pete Townsend fan.
Yeah, probably more than anything. Yeah.
Listening to his version of this song, I'm thinking, I'm pretty sure he's going for the Pete version. I would not be surprised if that's where he originally discovered the song too, was Pete Townshend's version. And, they've actually been playing it live for years as a medley with Better Man because it's very similar. The sound
not a lot
and
of
the
chord
structure
changes.
of that song, not a lot of chord changes. And they go right in from Better Man to Save It for Later. And you can see lots of, videos of them. In fact, there's one from 2016 where Eddie is playing guitar on it. They go into Save It for Later, and then he does the windmill for a long time, and then he smashes his guitar at the end. So, hello, I'm pretty sure that's a little bit influenced by Pete. It's interesting to hear the different versions of this because you get sort of the original sound that Dave Wakeling was going for on that steel guitar with the real, heavy acoustic sound, which is mimicked by Pete Townshend's version and Eddie Vedder's. But then you listen to the English Beat, and there's actually a lot going on in this song. It starts out with the guitar, but then the piano comes in, and bass and drums, but then you have the horns, saxophones, and strings.
It's not a funk song per se, but it's a funk approach where it's basically just 2-3 chords repeating throughout the song, and you're just adding different layers to the mix. A lot of people who don't get funk, they just say, well, it's just so repetitive. It's so repetitive. No, you got to listen to everything going on in the track. I mean, now there's this little percussion flourish. Oh, they're adding a little keyboard here. Oh, what a cool fill. I mean, there's all these little details on a good funk track, and it's the same concept.
When you listen to just the acoustic versions, it does feel very repetitive. It really, there's not a lot of changes.
No.
There's not a lot going on. And I think that the vocals add a lot to this song too, which I've always loved Dave Wakeling's vocals. Love
the verse and the chorus are the same chords, basically, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. It's just the same thing over and over, which is why, like you're saying, when you start adding all these other elements to it and you really listen to it, you're like, oh, there's actually a lot going on here. And it is quite varied and deep within the other instrumentation. The basic guitar just keeps playing the same thing over and over. There isn't much difference between the verses and the chorus. But as a whole, I think it's catchy. It's sing-alongable. Like I said, I love Dave's vocals.
I still don't know the lyrics at all.
You don't?
I
Well,
couldn't
I'm
tell you the
sure you
first
know
thing.
the chorus at least.
Not really. I know save it for later. Don't run away and let me
Sooner or
down.
later, your legs give way, you hit the ground. Save it for later, don't run away and let me down. That's
That's
the
about the
chorus.
only thing I know for sure.
And actually, it's a little bit harder to understand the lyrics when Dave Wakeling sings it. It's easier when on Pete Townshend's version.
He's got a really pleasing, warm baritone voice.
Yes, I love his voice. In fact, a lot of the songs on this album, especially I Confess, I mean, his vocals are just sublime. There's been some question about what this song is about, and that's one of the things on Pete's live version. He says, after he explains the tuning, something to the effect of, we're giving prizes afterward for anybody who can tell me what this song is about.
I don't think Dave Wakeling could even say what the song's about.
Well, Dave says that this song is basically about turning from a teenager into someone like in their 20s and realizing that life isn't going to be as simple as you thought it was going to be. And it's about just kind of not knowing your role in the world and
not knowing how to be an adult, I think, is
right.
essentially what it comes down to. So what am I supposed to do here? I'm supposed to be an adult, but I don't know what that means. I don't know how I'm supposed to react to these different situations.
And you've got people like telling you what to do and advising you, but you don't really know, what to do yourself. And
nobody ever tells you these things when you're a kid, that you're still going to feel the same way when you get to be older. It's just that you're expected to act a certain way.
Yeah.
But you're not going to feel that different.
Right. I met Dave Wakeling and I asked him about that because I was curious. Like I always thought, well, what's Pete going on about here? When he asked this question to the audience.
You've actually personally met both Pete and Dave Wakeling.
I have, yes. So Dave made some comment like, oh, I think Pete thought it was some gay thing. And I was like, oh, that's kind of what I was thinking too, actually. Because, Pete's never been upfront about his sexuality and he's always been...
We've already discussed that, I think, before on the podcast.
Yeah, so... and then
very coy.
Right, very coy about it. And then I found out just recently reading that Dave came out in 1985 as bisexual. And I was like, oh, well, if Dave's bisexual, Pete might be. I don't know. Maybe it is about, he had something there. But Dave did also mention to me, too, that he liked to put double entendres into his songs and like make people confused. And I was like, oh, kind of like, so after the English Beat, Dave Wakeling and Rankin Rogers split off. They left the band and started General Public, which had a pretty sizable hit in 84, I think it was, with Tenderness.
Yep.
And in
that'll
that
be
song,
a contender.
That'll definitely be one for me. In that song, there's a line where he says, like a buck, you can't stop pushing it. And I was like, oh, you mean like that? Because, it kind of sounds like another one. He's like, yeah, just like that. And so I'm like, yeah, you do that, don't you? So that's apparently where he was kind of going with this song, too, where save it for later. It's supposed to have this other connotation to it, that it's sexual.
All right. The joke is save it, comma, for later.
Yeah.
For later, as in one who performs fellatio.
Right.
Which is very, very esoteric. I don't know how many. I'm not British, so maybe that's something.
I don't know, but I feel like if anybody could read into that, it'd probably be Pete. It would probably be Pete. Anyway, so that's the background of the song, how it came about, and I think that it has become more popular. It is a song that probably a lot of people know. They may not know who the band is or anything about them. And this ended up being the English Beat's last album because, like I said, Dave and Roger went off and did General Public, and then David Steele and Andy Cox split off.
Andy Cox, the lead guitarist for English Beat.
And they formed the Fine Young Cannibals. They had big hits in the U.S.
Their second album had the big...
Yeah, that was later in the 80s.
Two big hits. Yeah, that was
She Drives Me Crazy and
88, 89.
Good Thing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Number one hits.
Yep. I guess I thought that there was just a rift between those two camps, but I guess what it comes down to is, you mentioned David Steele wasn't really productive writing for the third record, and he wanted to slow down on the touring, and Wakeling and Roger were more keen to keep pushing because they're breaking through in the States right now. They didn't have a hit with this album, but they're getting some radio play, particularly on the West Coast. They're making progress. They're being played a lot on MTV. So they're on the verge of breaking through to another level of commercial success. So he wanted to keep at it, and the other guys didn't want to.
Which is interesting because they actually had bigger success with Fine Young Cannibals than they
Right.
did
Yeah.
with the English Beat.
Yeah. General Public only was basically a one-hit wonder on the American charts.
Right.
Whereas Fine Young Cannibals had two sizable hit singles
Mm-hmm.
off the Raw and the Cook, their second record.
Yeah.
But I guess Steele and they just needed more time off. And Wakelings said, no, I want to keep going, so I'm going to do my own thing. We'll go off and do this. And I think they probably thought maybe they would come back together at some point. But then I just found this out too. I don't know if we'll have a Fine Young Cannibal song in the playlist when we get there, maybe. But apparently David Steele and Andy Cox, who were the brains behind Fine Young Cannibals, they had a big rift, which has never really healed. So they don't want to play on the same stage together. So it really has nothing to do with Dave Wakeling's relationship with the rest of them. At least this is from Dave's perspective. Others might say differently. And it's been a strange history since.
Dave Wakeling still tours as the English Beat, and he's the only original member.
Well, Ranking Roger's dead now, but they had different touring versions of the Beat. Now, we saw them, you and I, we went out to see Sting in the Gorge, and they were one of the opening acts, and they call themselves Special Beat. So it's a combination of English Beat and Specials guys. Over the years, there's just been these different amalgamations of former English Beat guys, whether it's Fine Young Cannibals or Special Beat, or at one point, Dave Wakeling was touring as English Beat in the States, and Ranking Roger was touring as Just the Beat in the UK. Although they had an agreement that they would do that, it wasn't a rift. He's done very little recording over the decades, just a lot of touring.
Yeah, they're just playing all of their old songs. There's nothing new that has come out since Special Beat Service.
So who knows what that fourth English Beat album could have been, their big commercial breakthrough in the United States, but we'll never know because they splintered after the Special Beat Service album came out. So save it for later. It didn't break the band up, but it illustrated there was some divisions there and resistance on the part of members to this particular song. And that's kind of what happens with our other song too, which is Van Halen's Motown cover. So this is off their fourth record, Diver Down, which comes out in 1982. Excuse me, their fifth record. We've talked about the two preceding albums that came out in 80 and 81, Women and Children First in 1980, Fair Warning in 1981. This is actually our first Van Halen song that's going on the main playlist. Dance the Night Away had been their hit off their second record, which I liked at the time, and it was in contention for this 79. There's just so many songs. Many great songs.
Unchained was in contention for me from 81. Yeah.
So there's been a few that have been close. We've got a song on our alternate playlist because Mike picked Van Halen as his album for 1978. So Running with the Devils on our alternate playlist that I'm curating on Apple Music. So this is our first song on the main playlist, and it's an interesting choice to be the first Van Halen song. Wasn't the biggest hit off this record. Another cover was.
Yeah. Well, this record had 5 covers on it, so.
Right.
And there's not that many songs on this album.
Yeah. Diver Down's an interesting record. It's very few people's favorite Van Halen album, certainly not members of the band. And it was a rush job, clearly a rush job. It's short. There's 5 covers on it. And of the original material, a lot of it is instrumental and kind of experimental sounding stuff.
Yeah.
So it's a kind of a Frankenstein record. It's kind of a strange record. And of the covers, there's a couple of unusual covers too. One of a old like ragtime blues song called Big Bad Bill is Sweet William Now. And then an a cappella barbershop quartet version of Happy Trails, which is Roy Rogers and Ginger Rogers' theme song.
Which honestly, those kind of, to me, show what David Lee Roth would be doing with his solo albums.
Yes. Basically, this record is signposting the eventual splintering of the original Van Halen. And this song had a lot to do with it. Ted Templeman was the producer on all the big Van Halen hit records with David Lee Roth. Big time producer in the 70s and 80s, produced the Doobie Brothers. He was one of the top producers at Warner Brothers. And Don Landy was the engineer on all these records. So all the Van Halen albums sound pretty good. Great producer-engineer combo there. But, Ted Templeman's looking for hits, okay? And so is David Lee Roth. David Lee Roth wants to be a big star, as big a star as possible. He wants hit records on not only FM rock radio, he wants to crack AM top 40.
He wants to be everywhere.
He wants his name in lights. I love David Lee Roth. I like them all. The Van Halen brothers, I didn't know this until really researching this episode. I knew they were Dutch. I knew they were born in the Netherlands, but they're biracial. Their mother was Indonesian. So they had to deal with racism growing up, not only in their
Mm-hmm.
homeland, but after they moved to the United States, didn't know the language. So these
Yeah.
strange kids who barely speak English and they're slightly Asian looking. But Eddie's just this genius guitar player. Both were forced to take classical piano lessons. They're the sons of a musical father, Jan, who played clarinet. In fact, the story is on the boat trip over the United States, he played in bands on the ship to help pay for the passage. Their
Mm.
father did. So they were steeped in music as youngsters, forced to take classical training. And then rock and roll gets into their lives, and Eddie takes up the drums and Alex takes up the guitar. And you're like, well, wait a minute, you got it backwards. No, that's the way it was originally. Eddie was the drummer, Alex was a guitar player. But then Eddie started picking up Alex's guitar when he was out of the house and playing around with it, discovered he had an affinity. Next thing you know, they've swapped instruments, and the rest is history. The extraordinary thing about Van Halen is you look at the talent in this group, not only Eddie Van Halen, who was a preeminent guitarist of his time. As a youngster in rock music, when I was in junior high and high school, it was basically between three guys. Who's the best guitarist? It's Eddie Van Halen, Alex Lifeson, or Angus Young. If you're into hard rock, one of those three is your favorite guitarist.
Yeah.
But Van Halen, obviously, very talented collection of, David Lee Roth, no great shakes as a vocalist, but a born frontman. He's just a great entertainer. And he was smart enough, and he's a smart guy. He's a upper middle class, son of a surgeon, born in the Midwest, relocated to California, Jewish background, real sharp mind, quick wit, ADHD, and just hyperactive. Clearly didn't need the drug of choice in the 80s to get him going, but he certainly did his fair share of that too. They all were into cocaine. Eddie, sadly, very badly hooked on it for years. But wow, they're just rocking the house, and they're playing parties and small clubs in LA for the longest time. Gene Simmons discovers them, passes their tape along, but nobody wanted to know about them. Hard rock just wasn't, people didn't think that was a winner. This is when disco was dominating the airwaves. And it was really tough for a hard rock act to get signed, even though they were obviously talented. But once Warner Brothers finally caught on and signed them, their first record takes off like a rocket. And it's because of Eddie Van Halen primarily. The Eruption solo just knocked everybody flat. Nobody heard anything like it before. He didn't invent the tapping technique, but he certainly perfected it on that record. And that was a lot of people's exposure to that sound was on that record the first time. Eddie will tell you there's others who'd done it and he'd seen it done, but they were more obscure. Guys like Harvey Mandel, Alan Holdsworth, who was one of the few guitarists that he really worshiped. So their first album's a big hit, and it's got covers on it. It's got a Kinks cover on it. You Really Got Me. That's their first hit. It's a cover. Their second record, Dance the Night Away, great radio song, but there's a cover. The first track on the record, You're No Good. Linda Ronstadt had already had a hit with it, but it's a 60s tune. Eddie's like, enough of this. His quote is, I'd rather flop with my own music than have hits with somebody else's. So he starts to, there's a push and pull here. David Lee Roth wants to be a pop star. Eddie Van Halen's a more serious musician. He wants to go in a more serious direction, more progressive, darker. So that's those third and fourth records, Women and Children First and Fair Warning. Those are the Eddie albums, and those are the Van Halen head albums. The real Van Halen fans really dig those records. They didn't have big hits, top 40 hits on them, but they've endured as, your hardcore Van Halen fan is generally going to like one of those records best. So then Diver Down, it's starting to swing the other way. Now David Lee Roth and Ted Templeman are getting more of their way. Here come the covers again. They recorded Oh Pretty Woman, cover the Roy Orbison song, just as a stopgap measure. They'd come off this long, arduous tour for Fair Warning, wanted to take some time off, but they wanted to stay relevant. They wanted to keep a song out there. They didn't want to do a whole nother album and tour. So they record this one-off single. What do you know? It's a big hit. I don't know if it made the top 10, got close. Yeah. And now the record company's like, guys, we got this single. It's playing everywhere. It's a smash. You need to get back in the studio and record another album and get your asses back on stage and tour this shit. And they're like, oh, God, no, we want to take that. So basically, they rushed this album out. There's 5 covers, as Cheryl mentioned. Another Kinks song is the lead track. Now, I've listened to this album. I've had it for a while. And I never listened to it a ton when I first got it. Going back and listening to the album, it's a lot better than I remember. And it could have
Mhm.
been a great album. Could have been a great album. But leading off with the Kinks cover, I don't know who thought that was a good idea. It's not
It's
bad.
not even one of my favorite Kink songs.
No, I mean it's and they don't really do anything with it. It doesn't sound
No.
that different from the original. It's
Mm-mm.
fine. It's good. It's it's not
Whereas I think
bad.
their version of "You Really Got Me," they do make it their own, and it
Yes.
sounds great. And yeah, but this is not one of those times where they do that with a cover.
So I think that was a bad mistake in sequencing, putting that as the lead track on the album. I'm not saying it should have been on the record, but it shouldn't have been the lead track on side
Yeah,
one. I think if you either take that out or move it later in the record, something to
yeah,
shake up the sequencing could have made this a much better record. You add one more Eddie original on here and take that out of the lead spot, I think you've got one of their best albums. Because there's some really, really cool stuff
it has
on this
one of
record.
my, if not my favorite Van Halen song on it. Little Guitars.
Etch a sketch, etch a sketch.
Love this song,
Yes.
and David actually sings on it, and
Yeah,
it
sings
sounds
well.
good.
Yeah.
Really cool guitar riff, and I just love that song. But yeah, I think that the originals on this album are all really good.
Yeah. And they did a good job with Oh Pretty Woman, too.
They did. That is a good cover as well.
Yeah.
Yes. But that's not the song you're choosing either.
Nope, I'm not choosing Oh Pretty Woman. I'm not choosing Where Have All the Good Times Gone. You said it. There are some really good originals on this. Little Guitars, Secrets, Hang 'em High.
I like the full bug too.
Yes, I do too. I like all the originals. And then the instrumental bits, a little more experimental for Eddie. He's getting in all these. He's really a big Peter Gabriel fan. He has an actual instrumental interlude on there called
Intruder. Yeah.
which is the name of a track on Peter Gabriel 3. And it
Yes.
sounds like something on Peter Gabriel 3.
Yeah, that's what leads into Oh Pretty Woman.
Right.
You know, and they used to play that on the radio oftentimes leading up to the song.
Cathedral, just beautiful, ethereal sounds. He's getting it's a volume pedal exercise, I think, and effects on the guitar. Beautiful sound.
The little guitars intros, that flamenco sound.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. He plays some classical acoustic on this record. I mean, it's just showing the range of his gifts. I mean, he could play anything. But the song I'm choosing is another cover, and it leads off side 2. And I already referenced the word funk. This is the funkiest this band ever got. And it's the Van Halen brothers, not just Eddie, but Alex kills it. What a great drum track on this record. And it's a lot like Dave Barbarossa to me. It sounds like there's some overdubbing going on in this. But if you listen to David Lee Roth, he says they knocked that out basically with no overdubs, which blows my mind because that funky drum track and the cowbell
Yeah.
and the whole, I mean, it just kills. And then you've got the guitar sound mixed in with the synth, which is such a cool sound. It's just such a cool sounding track. It's funky. It's danceable. David, again, sings well on it. And
Yeah.
I've loved this song ever since the first time. I didn't hear it until years later. I don't remember hearing it when it was a hit in 82. And it only scraped the top 40. It wasn't a big hit. Pretty Woman was the bigger hit.
Right. David Lee Roth originally wanted Dancing in the Street as the first song that they would record and release.
Well, here's the deal. So the instrumental track with the guitar and the Moog synthesizer interwoven, Eddie had come up with that already before they decided they were going to put Dancing on the Street on the record. He'd come up with this piece of music, and he was working on an original piece of music. And then Dave and Ted Templeman, who were kind of allied, you had this alliance of David Lee Roth and the producer, Ted Templeman. Meanwhile, Eddie Van Halen and Don Landy were forming a separate alliance. So Dave and Ted were like, that'll work great on Dancing in the Street. We got to use that on that track. And Eddie somewhat reluctantly gave in. And I think he always resented because he wanted that for his own original piece of music. But he relented, gave it to them. They ended up interpolating that into their cover. And it works. It just works great. But, you know, it's the sad story of Van Halen. I mean, Van Halen, obviously Eddie Van Halen is, you know, a musical genius and in the elite company guitar. So he, instrumentally, he's head and shoulders above in the group. But Van Halen, the magic of Van Halen is the combination of these four guys. And yes, Michael Anthony is part of that magic.
Including backup singing for Michael Anthony.
Yes. And it's the cruelty of these guys to Michael Anthony in the intervening years is just, God, it's just galling. You know, he's not Jaco Pastorius. You know, he's never going to win any bass contests. You know, he's this short, kind of tubby, bearded guy. He's not real cool looking, but what he did fit in with the band and those high harmonies. I mean, the harmonies of Van Halen are critical to the popularity and their sound, and he's part of that. Now, Eddie Van Halen, intervening years, Nakius. Well, God, you know, I was one of those harmony singers too. It's like they've gone out of their way to try and point out that he's this lesser component of the band as far as pushing him to the margins and not including him in the royalty cut of album sales, you know, making him a hired hand.
Yeah.
It's just unfortunate. All these, you know, like cocaine obviously plays on the male ego there too.
This song actually is one where the backing vocals are very important.
Yes.
And you really can't do this song. I mean, it was a Motown, you know, Martha and the Vandellas. And it has like the backing vocals are just a huge component of this song from the original. And they do emulate that. And I think they do a good job with it. It's a tough song to do without having those backup vocals. And a lot of people have covered this song. I mean, from back to where like the Kinks, the Who, the Mamas and the Papas, the Dead, the Grateful Dead version is like totally groovy and disco-y sounding.
Oh, and then there is the god-awful...
the worst. I know, the Mick Jagger, David Bowie version?
Yes. Oh, God.
No.
Obviously, we're a couple of years away from talking about Live Aid, but we will definitely cover that ground when we get there. And they made such a big deal about premiering this video with David Bowie and Mick Jagger. And I remember watching this and I was like, oh, God.
Not only
awful.
Is it just like a terrible version, but the video is embarrassing.
Everything about it was embarrassing.
Yeah.
But Van Halen's cover, they knock it out of the park, in my opinion.
I think they do the best cover of this song. I think there's, of all the cover versions, which there are many, is the best.
So in my waffling and choosing a song for this week, this song sat in beautifully on the playlist when I listened to it a few times. It just worked in there, where the other one didn't quite make it for me. So I'm going with Van Halen, and I'm not ruling out Bow Wow Wow. In fact, there's still 3 Bow Wow Wow songs that are jumping around that I have a tough time picking.
My favorite Bow Wow Wow song is Do You Want to Hold Me, which came out in 83. So that could make its way to the playlist still.
Yeah. So instead of going with the Bow Wow Wow cover, we're going with the Van Halen cover, Dancing in the Street from the Diver Down album, along with English Beats, Save It for Later off their third and final record, Special Beat Service, which we haven't yet ruled out as Cheryl's album of the year.
No, it's definitely in contention.
We both have picked albums we think are going to be our albums of the year going in, and haven't yet changed our minds, but we're continuing to review the albums of the year. I haven't even gotten to Prince yet. Remember, 1999 comes out before the end of 1982.
Yeah, that's one of those that kind of sneaks up on me. I'm like, that's right, I forgot that came out this year. And there's quite a few like that too that I just don't really equate with 1982 necessarily. And then I remember that they're from that year. Yeah.
Yeah, some of that will push into 1983, and a lot of Thriller will push into 1983 as well.
Yes.
We'll get to that then. But as for this week, those are the 2 songs that we are choosing, and I got no idea where we're going with next week's episode. I think we're going to talk about Come On Eileen, which is one of our global hits for the year.
The album is also in contention for me as well.
To Rye. I need to track that down and listen to it. I think I started listening to a Dexy's album a while back.
Their first album.
They fall into a category that fascinates me, and as far as groups or artists considered one-hit wonders that really had a lot deeper catalog than most people realize. I think Dexys is one of those. There's a lot of bands like that.
There is a version of To Rye that is as it should have sounded in parentheses, and it's the Kevin Rowland, remixed version of what he intended it to sound like at the time.
So anyway, we got that to look forward to, Come On Eileen, and we'll pick another song or 2 to go along with that next time we get together. But until then, thank you for joining us on Matt and Cheryl's Gen Excellent Playlist. I'm Matt.
I'm Cheryl.
Take care, everybody.